Glynn County Joint Water Sewer Commission meeting for Thursday, October 4th, 2018 will come to order. I'll give the invocation, and Commissioner Browning, if you'll lead us in the pledge, I'd appreciate it. May we all rise for the invocation. Dear, wise, and loving Father, first let me say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for the life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you and the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us even so from your boundless and gracious nature. We ask you to guide our work today to help us rejuvenate the Brunswick-Glynn County Joint Water Sewer System. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do we have any public? No public? Okay. We're going to go into executive session here, but before we go into executive session, I'd like to have a motion to excuse Commissioner Adams. He called in, said his wife was sick, and he had to take her to the doctor. So could I get a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay. Motion is carried.
I'd like to do the same for Commissioner Copeland if we can. I know right before this meeting, he had a family emergency. Don't know if he's going to be able to make it or not, but he had intended to come. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you make a motion on him?
Yeah.
Second.
Does that count?
Yeah. Well, you explained it. Now to make the motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to excuse Commissioner Copeland.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, motion is carried. Okay. We need to go into executive session. Can I have a motion to go into executive session for legal matter?
Motion to go into executive session for legal matter.
Second.
All those in favor, please. What?
Potential litigation.
Potential litigation. I'm sorry.
That too.
I don't know. Same as me. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, we're going to executive session. come out of executive session.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Say aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. Where's 5?
Ben.
And 6?
Mike. I did. I did.
Yeah, that's not enough. That's a wait.
Man, we ain't even approved the minutes yet. I know.
We've had a motion second to come out of executive session. Huh? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All those in favor of coming out of executive session, please raise your right hand. Okay, motion's carried. We're back in regular session. And the first approval items are the minutes of 19 September, special call commission meeting, and then the 19 September executive session. So if you review those, and I'll take,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes from September 19, 2018, special called commission meeting.
okay,
Mr. Chairman, I second that motion.
all right. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, motion's carried. Next
Mr. Cha-
item.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes from September 19, 2018, special called executive session.
All those, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion's carried. Minutes from September 20th.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes from September 20, 2018, regular meeting.
Okay, second.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, special call of the executive session on the 20th.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes from September 20, 2018, executive session.
I second that too.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All the minute items are approved. Okay, next up is the Pump Station 256 dedication. Thank you, thank you.
Afternoon, Commissioners. What you have before you today is a warranty deed that is deeding the property that the lift station 2056 sits on to JWSC. Behind that are multiple easements related to the Frederica Township development. In August of 2012, Frederica Development Group submitted an application for dedication of their wastewater and water systems to the JWSC. During that time, the easement that is in the back of this package was submitted along with that application and was approved and accepted by the JWSC. The application was accepted as well. The only thing in that package that was actually recorded was a waiver, release, indemnification, and hold harmless agreement between JWSC and Frederica. The easement was never recorded. Now, today, there was also not recorded a deed of the 2056 land to JWSC. Frederica has now submitted an application to dedicate the land that 2056 sits on to the JWSC. And with your approval today, we would accept that deed and accept the land that the 2056 lift station is located on. And additionally, y'all would be authorizing us to record and or have re-executed the easements that were previously accepted by the JWSC so that we can now have those recorded as well.
Okay, so we'll own the land.
We don't own the land, 2056 own, that's right.
Okay,
I'll make a motion.
okay.
I hereby move that JWSC accept the dedication of lift station 2056 from Frederica Development Group LLC and direct the staff to record the easements previously executed.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, no discussion. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried, 6-0. Okay, this is the Pump Station 3114 upgrade. This is at Southport.
It is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. There's a map attached to give you an idea of the location, but this is the Southport exit 29 area. Exhibit attached there, show you locations. Pump station 3114 is about in the center of the page there. It's labeled or annotated. That's the asset we're talking about right now. We've had in previous commission meetings a couple folks, potential customers come in and ask us for help in this area. This project was designated in the master plan update. It's a pump station designated as over design capacity. Essentially, we've had folks shut off from tying on that system within the basin of 3114. Quick summary. That's exactly what this is. Pump station 3114 upgrade to accommodate current and future demands. Designated, as I had said before, as over capacity. Cost, budget we're asking for $275,000. Funding source, capital expansion funds. This also is currently listed on the proposed 5-year capital project list that's been presented to the commission. And the product we'll get out of it allows connection of all existing platted lots in Basin 3114 if it's approved as staff recommends. So 2 different phases to it. Essentially, the first phase is a pump upgrade, putting bigger horsepower pumps in there. And panels, thank you. And panel upgrades to accommodate those pumps and controls. Variable frequency drives, so we can operate those pumps. A little more flexibility in operation. Second phase that's recommended is on the exhibit map. You'll see down closer towards the plant site, down at the right-hand side of the page, you'll see a red dashed line. That's proposed force main. So we would intercept the existing 6-inch force main with a new 12-inch force main and run down that piece of property and come in the backside or the southern side of the plant and go to the headworks from that point. So we're not quite cutting the existing force main in half, but about 2/3 of the way down, we're switching from a 6-inch to a 12-inch with this proposed plan. Good news is that property, you may ask, well, how are we going to do that? We actually own, the Joint Water and Sewer Commission actually owns that property that we're proposing to run down. It was transferred to us when the JWSC was formed. So we have the route available to do it if the commission decides to exercise this option. That's a quick summary, and I'm happy to answer any other questions. I do want to point out, added some numbers in here for you to consider. With phase 1 in there, what we'll be doing, we try to equate everything on this side to apples to apples. We use REUs. You can think of an REU as one household. This first phase of the upgrade with the pumps will increase the capacity down there by about 214 REUs, or 214 households. And there's a little bit of commercial mixed in there too, so consider that. Second phase, well, before I move on, 214 REUs times $6,800 for a water and sewer tap fee. That's the capital portion of new connection fees. Would be about $1.4 million. So that's the potential. If we were to get 214 new connections down there, that's the value of it. Phase 2, the force main extension or increase would add another 105 REUs on there with a value of around $714,000. Keep in mind this budget we're asking for is about $275. We currently have, we did a quick run back on people that have knocked on our door saying we want to tie in, and we put them on hold. We've got about 54 estimates we've provided. No guarantees that they'll come in tomorrow if this plan's approved or we get the improvements done, that they'll come in and tie on or apply to tie on. But we do have that interest, that documented interest in that area. A lot of platted lots, existing lots, that folks are held up from either building upon or transferring ownership. Nobody's going to buy a lot if they can't get a tap. So that's kind of the quick breakdown there. We did look at a couple improvements before. One was a SCADA option. That was a low-cost option. Master plan even presented an option in there. Staff thinks this is the best option to go with. Happy to answer any questions.
On phase one, it's only $60,000, and it's going to increase the capacity to 214 REUs for $60,000. Right now, we've only got roughly 50, so that would hold us for a pretty good while.
It would.
And phase two is estimated to cost $150,000, and we're only going to get 200 and something additional REUs. Maybe we should just do phase one right now and hold off on phase two. Let's plan on phase two, but I'm concerned about the size and everything else, because right now we got is it 16-inch force main coming all the way? What size is that large force main that's coming?
So the one that comes from Buck Swamp, formerly the Peninsula Development, is a 16-inch. There's no pump station on the upper end of that thing. It's just simply force main in the ground now. But that terminates right now, right at the corner of Southport Parkway and 17. So it doesn't essentially, it discharges the few homes that are tied on in the Peninsula Development. I think we've got 3 homes tied on to it. Right now it discharges to a gravity manhole right by the what's the name of the multifamily development there on the corner? Abington Woods, thank you. That's all that it does. It stops at that point.
Well, I think we ought to just do phase one, and then before we start putting in a 12-inch force main, let's look at the overall system and see, because we got 6-inch, 12-inch, and all this, and it's kind of a mishmash.
Why did you all
and we have
recommend
additional
phase
capacity.
two?
Phase two would cover all, it would open up or provide capacity. In other words, our commitment to platted lots down there would essentially, we'd be at, everything would be covered.
So it's not a bigger geographic area, it's just more lots within the geographic area.
Correct.
So phase two is necessary for all of the platted lots.
That's correct, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But it's,
Go
again,
with-
still the same geographic area, it's just how many within the,
That's correct.
But we don't have tap fees from any of those lots yet.
That's correct. That's correct. One other thing to consider is we've had conversations in the last 2 weeks with property owners down there who are looking eagerly to do multifamily developments. So there's one 5-acre tract. They're in the process of doing their diligence. They're very interested in what happens here today. In another one down on the far end towards Clearwater, there's some multifamily planned. It's not platted yet, but it's planned. So we do have the interest. I think it appears to be a very quick payback, money-wise.
Yeah.
And we can always stage the construction for the need, for sure, as needed. But
Well, the force main could be put in pretty quick if that development came in.
it could.
It could be put in well before it was finished.
and there's no throwaways left over from phase one, if we just tacked on phase two a year from now, is it?
That's certainly an option, certainly.
I mean, it is.
Well, now, you're saying it's certainly an option, but is it a costly option? Is there mobilization costs we have to reincur?
It would be 2 separate, so phase one with the pump upgrade, we would likely do in-house with our own forces. The phase two, the install, we would contract out likely. And there would be some design work that would go along with that, but it would be contracted out. So 2 different entities would do the actual work.
Even the way it's set up now?
Yes, yes.
What sort of schedule are you looking at for phase one and then phase two?
Phase one, delivery time on the pumps, if we order them, I can't remember what I think it was about 30 to 60 days to receive the pumps, and I would give us about that much more time to install. And thank you for bringing up that scheduling question. One other thing is we have folks that have a need right now to purchase taps from us, and they're currently being put on hold. If this plan were to be approved, staff would then ask for executive director's permission to go ahead and sell taps, having a plan in place and approved by the board and funded by the board to at least allow, if not all, a metered portion of taps with people that need it now to be released. So
Would that
Thrown out.
require both Phase 1 and Phase 2 approval?
Phase 2, the intent of Phase 2 is to fund a project for all liability down there for us, all platted lots. That's why staff's recommended both phases at this time, so that we can say all platted lots down there are funded to be accommodated.
Okay,
Could certainly do Phase 1 only, and it would
okay.
improve the
So
station.
I understand doing Phase 1 only, and Commissioner Turnip said I think we need to give the staff authority to do both Phase 1 and Phase 2.
I think.
Todd, one thing on phase one, if we just did phase one, well, never mind.
Phase 1 gives us 2/3 of the capacity we're looking for. I mean, we really expect to grow so fast that we're out of the 2/3. Maybe I missed those numbers, I apologize.
What we're trying, what staff, as we analyze things, we want to address the liability that we have in the lots. In other words, we either have the capacity at the moment, or we have the project and funding solidified for that obligation. When I say obligation, I mean platted lots, potential customers.
So what you're saying, if somebody comes in and would be in Phase 2, we'd have to tell them, if we only do one phase, that we don't have it.
Once we sold 214 REUs, we wouldn't have the capacity. But I mean, if we sold
You
100,
don't have
we'd
to
still
sell everything in Phase 1 to sell in Phase 2 also.
Okay, I don't mind phase one and phase two, but on phase two, when we take bids, let's take bids with a 12-inch, 10-inch, and an 8-inch force main.
Absolutely.
So we can get it straight in our mind what size force main we really need to meet the ultimate flow in that requirement. Because I don't think we've studied that enough.
Certainly. The 12-inch, we've modeled out using the 12-inch there, and ironically, to satisfy the whole need by the calculation method we use, 633 gallons a minute. Ironically, when we plugged in the 12-inch force main into the model, we got right there at the same flow rate, so that's why our recommendation was for that.
Okay.
Does Phase 1 and Phase 2 serve the same footprint of REUs? So if we do only Phase 1, then we have 200 and some odd REUs available to us, 214. I mean, how fast would we sell those? You're looking at I think you said maybe 2 to 4 months to have Phase 1 complete, and then Phase 2. Did you define a schedule for that one?
Phase 2, off the top of my head, it's 1,400 feet of force main. With the design and everything put in there, it can be done in 6 months.
6 months.
4 to 6 months, I would say.
So if you held up Phase 2, you're holding up the additional 200 some odd REUs. And the question is, would we sell those in the next 4 months?
We would not. I would not expect us to. Like, we have, the 54 or so that are at hand right now, but are not guaranteed. Those are just folks that have come in asking. The potential projects and everything, so nothing's guaranteed. It's a potential. That are knocking on the door right now too. We see the need being there. Definitely not within 4 months. Definitely not within 4 months.
So Phase 1, we could complete Phase 1 and then January, February timeframe, depending on how sales go, come back and authorize Phase 2.
Certainly could. The board certainly could do that.
Or when you sell 2/3 of them, or 50% of them, or whatever it is.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I'll make an amended motion. I recommend the JWSC Board of Commissioners approve proceeding with Phase 1 of the recommended improvements to increase the capacity of pump station 3,114 with new pumps at an estimated cost of $60,000.
Second.
Okay, before I call the vote, I'm gonna vote no. I think we should give the whole, the commission, correction, the staff, the authority to do the Southport S3114 improvements as they have recommended, as they have looked at, and what they think the future looks like down there. I think the funding is available in our SIF funds, and I would like the motion to be rejected. Are there any other comments by any other?
Yes, I got a comment. I was looking at here, the staff report here, and it says that staff recommend implementation of the phase 1 option immediately and proceeding with phase 2 option after a final analysis is complete. I don't know what that final analysis is, but I think if our motion had been that we will do phase 1 and then immediately afterwards we'll do phase 2, pending whatever, some condition or whatever, like I would be in favor of that.
As it's written currently.
But the motion down here is not written as that, so we don't have, that's one of the reasons why I think it come across kind of
Okay.
different.
Well, essentially, all
Vote
Ben's
down-
motion
Excuse me, if we vote down the current motion, would you move to do it that way?
Yeah, I can do that, because I think,
I'll withdraw my first motion.
okay.
Okay. Parliamentary,
Well, we got a motion and a second. You can't withdraw it, I don't think.
Then we have to go ahead and vote on it, okay.
We got to vote on it.
Can we amend it?
Yes, he could amend it if it hadn't been voted upon.
If we can amend it, we could add to it.
He can, I mean, if you want to kind of
well, somebody else can amend the motion
change your
too.
motion, amend your motion to include the wording about further review of phase 2 by staff before they proceed.
Okay.
I think that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
I recommend a JW, this is gonna be the amended motion. I recommend a JWSC Board of Commissioners approve phase 1 of the recommended improvements and the evaluation to be completed by staff on phase 2
Before they proceed.
before they proceed with construction of phase 2 improvements.
I second that.
okay. Any other comments, questions?
Will you say that one more time? I missed part of that. I missed the part about the analysis.
We added it for the staff to evaluate, complete the evaluation on the force main sizing before proceeding with phase 2 of the improvements.
The thing I liked about the first one, and I'm fine with that too, but the thing I liked about the first one was that if our projections are wrong and, 2 years from now, we haven't sold but 50% of the taps, why invest money now that we're not going to be for 3 years? I mean, it sounds like it's a pretty quick turnaround to complete phase 2. So I personally like the idea of doing phase 1. We're not rejecting phase 2. We're just taking a pause before we approve phase 2 and allocate that money. And then a year from now, 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, whenever the need is, then we can also approve the second phase.
Well, I think the way we've structured it now
It's the
is
same
that
thing.
it allows the staff to determine that they can go ahead and do phase 2. And I think that's good.
Well, I also think that I agree with you about whether we have the people who's going to come on board, the REUs, so forth. I agree with that part. However, the staff need to know that they would be looking at doing an analysis report on getting this thing ready, because it may come in right away. People start buying up them taps and so forth.
Right. So if we got the 50% of phase 1's usage, then we could automatically.
Well, it's almost the same thing. I think it's go ahead and watch.
That's what I'm saying, and I'm fine with that. But I mean,
Yes. I think
that's
it's-
why I like the first one.
Yeah, I think it.
We at JWSC, the commission, basically walked away from Southport,
Oh, I agree. We shouldn't have done
okay?
that. But
And now what we're saying is we're open for business down here, and that signals to developers that they can start in this area.
right, 214 REUs worth of that.
Right. Okay.
And the rest if it's needed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions before I call? We have a motion and a second, correct?
Yes.
Would you read back
No.
the motion as is currently worded? Do you have that?
No, sir. I was going to have to pull it from the video.
Okay. What we're going to do is approve phase 1 and phase 2, but phase 2 based on the analysis that we should do it. Is that pretty much it?
Well, the evaluation by staff.
Yeah. All right. there's no other comments or questions, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Okay, motion passed.
So a question on the same lines though. Where else are we not open for business?
A couple other places, or at least one other place, major place right now, we call it 4021. If you're familiar where Sonic is, the restaurant, the food place, right off Altama. That is a station that's designated well in the red right now, and it does have several commercial developments held out at the
So
moment.
are we looking at those areas too, trying to figure out what we can do to make those areas open for business as well?
Absolutely, Commissioner. You'll see very soon a proposal from staff to improve that situation as well.
Is that the only area or are there other?
There are a couple smaller areas out, satellite areas, but that is the major. There's another one, 4023 up Altama. There's a couple of proposed projects in that area that would be affected by it, but could be addressed with that construction. Be happy to show you more detail on that. But that's the next major one is 4021.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Junkin on SPLOST 2016 Pump Station 4003 Engineering Design Award.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff's looked at, and I have gone back and talked to the various proposers who proposed engineering services for the improvements to Lift Station 4003. Problem I run into is that there is a disparity in what each engineer is proposing relative to the other, so it's hard to place a value on the various proposals versus each other at this time. And staff recommendation is to reject all proposals and reissue a RFP with a very defined scope of work for the design of improvements and services during construction for Lift Station 4003. We feel like we can, as a staff, put together a very, very tightly defined scope of work that will allow us to better assess what would happen if we reissue the RFP.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I recommend that staff be directed to develop a new RFP for the selection of engineering services to design the desired improvements for the Lift Station 4003 and provide services during construction.
Commissioner,
Second?
just a clarification. You're not recommending, you are actually making a motion. You're moving. The
Make a motion.
the recommendation says I recommend.
Oh,
So it should say I move.
I move. Let me, the first few words there.
Or I make a
Janice,
motion.
was I move. That staff be directed, then all the rest of it.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Thank you, counsel.
Second. That's a good one.
Comments, questions? There's no comments or questions, I'll call the motion. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, 5 people, 6 people, excuse me. Motion carried.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we are now to discussion items. Commissioner Stevens, you sent an email requesting to move studies to be first. Would you like to make a motion to move studies first?
Yes, sir, so moved.
Be the first item in the discussion agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Yes.
we'll wait till Mike comes back. We can, yeah. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, motion carried. We'll do studies next. Okay. How do I get to that?
It's the one on the left.
What?
Oh, it's the one on the, it's the presentation on the desktop on the left.
Question?
We're gonna wait until Commissioner Browning gets back.
Just gonna grab water, get a dry coffee, maybe.
Okay. We moved discussion item on studies to be the first item on discussions.
Vote for that.
So we started looking at doing some studies, and I kind of wanted to lay out what I thought were important points in discussion and get everybody's input on it. And what did you tell me to? Yeah, this is kind of where I started at. It's not necessarily a complete list of things, of priorities and expectations, but as we look at studies, and we're going to do studies, I think the first thing that we need to look at is a potential return on investment. And that's the number of new customers that we can gain as a result of implementing study recommendations. We need first of all, we need reliable population growth estimates for new and existing areas. We need reliable estimates on customers transitioning from septic tanks, and if we're going to do water, to transition away from local well water. And that requires somebody to go out and actually poll potential customers. Meaning, if we had people came in from Ellis Point, well, we actually need to go out there and we need to commission a study for somebody to go around and really see who's interested in coming off their septic tank and going to sewers. And it also requires some sort of formal requirement that they sign up to say, we'll do this. And I think that would be one of the study goals. We also need a good engineering cost to implement the project. I mean, we need to know the technology to be used and the cost to install the technology solution. And then given the number of customers and the time frame that it'll take to bring those customers on board and the estimated cost to put the solution in the ground, then we'll have what the potential return on investment is. We also need to look at, with the study, the source of funding, whether we can use it or do it within capital improvement funds, or we have to go out and borrow money through loans. The idea is quick wins. The effort that we just approved for Southport to Pump Station 3114 is a good example that the staff did, but they did it basically because they knew the area pretty well, and it kind of it's a quick win. If we have an area that septic tanks are failing, and we get, through our polling, determine that we can get a quick win out of that, that's where we ought to put capital improvement funds. Okay. Then I looked at, what's going on within the joint water staff. And we have limited staff time. They're fully engaged in just doing their day-to-day job, not really looking forward. The majority of the engineering staff is committed to customer service, developing reviews and talking to homeowners and home builders for things that they need. They're also executing and supervising SPLOST projects. and the engineering staff is looking at updating, or is updating GIS information, which we need to really focus our efforts in the future. And then the other parts of the staff are doing business operations, doing asset management implementation, and consolidating our inventory, so we have a better handle on that. And they're working on a strategic business plan. We also have difficulty in hiring technically qualified personnel, primarily in this case a project engineer. The other limitations on us performing studies are some funds, and there are some funds in the technical service budget, but there are also many requirements that come from that area that need to be funded. And then we can use capital improvement funds to fund studies for system expansion requirements, such as if we choose to go into an area and try to alleviate failing septic systems, we can use capital improvement funds to fund those studies, and we should do that and get third parties to do it. And my bottom line is, from my viewpoint, the staff plate is full and studies need to be accomplished by third parties, even though that requires more staff time to manage and requires funding. So, establishing the needs. I looked at the projected growth for the county from the Coastal Georgia Regional Water Authority. And the growth projection that I had started with 2015, we were at 83,300 people. And by the year 2050, the growth is expected to be 32,147. And their same projection for our requirements to meet that additional growth of the 115,000 is that we'll have 20 million gallons per day permitted capacity available. So we will still have approximately 5.3 million gallons in excess capacity with that growth potential. So given that, it doesn't seem like we need to do a lot of studies regarding additional sewer plant capacity, but we need to improve the capacities of the sewers we do have and ways that we can do that. This is a draft county. It's a little hard to see. You have the map in your book. Light green area on there. If we look at the north area, which is one of the ones we were talking about, in the north, where we talked about a North Mainland plant, a lot of the area in the north is dedicated to conservation. That's the light green area. The olive green area, which is also in that area, is designated as rural, and generally there's not water and sewer service provided in rural areas. The light tan on your map, and it's hard to see on this particular view, but you can see it on your map, is where there's low density zoning, R20, which are large lots, and all of those will accommodate sewer, or septic systems with a large area, and a developer may not want to go to the expense of putting in a sewer system. And then the purple area is what is designated for industrial, and then red areas is commercial. So in looking at that, potential study areas that we may want to talk about is the need for a North Mainland sewer plant. Providing sewer service to Glynn areas with failing septic systems. Another area that we really haven't ever talked about here, but is a consideration, is reuse water marketability. And it is a way to expand the capacity of our two major, or correction not maybe, but two of our sewer plants, Dunbar Creek and Southport. And under Southport, if I understand this correctly, 500,000 gallons a day has to be, in the permit, has to be dedicated to reuse. Did I say that correctly? That's correct. We do not have anything like that at Dunbar Creek. But Dunbar Creek, you know, to looking at it, we may have an opportunity to low-cost install, they're called purple lines, right? Purple lines on St. Simon's Island and sell irrigation water. And the advantage of irrigation water to people is the fact that it has a lot of nutrients in the water. Even though the water is safe to drink and all that, it still has a lot of nutrients in it, which would require less, is what the word's supposed to be, fertilization. And then there's golf courses up there that Sea Palms and maybe even Sea Island that could reduce well usage if they got on to reuse water. So there may be some capability in there that we need to look at. I don't think just sitting here today, we really know what opportunities may lie in reuse water if we invest some money to do it. And then we also need to look at elevated water requirements within the county. So with that, I'll have to open the discussion. Any questions? Go ahead.
I appreciate the presentation you made, Mr. Chairman. And I agree with a lot that was said. So far as the North Mainland Sewer Plant, in SPLOST 5, was obligated $1.5 million, and only about $19,000 has been expended on that. That's for the site, permit, and design of the mainland wastewater treatment plant. And the original budget for that project was $5 million. As it relates to that, there has been some interest from developers on the other side of I-95. And of course, there's trade winds and everything else. As I mentioned at the last meeting, if we continue to pump everything from the North Mainland all the way to the Academy Creek, we're going to have to continue upgrading the Academy Creek distribution collection system. And that's going to be very expensive. There will be some growth in the North Mainland. Your population projections are probably a lot more accurate than was done in the master plan. And that's good that we looked at it. The Southport, we're addressing the needs there with what we just authorized the staff to move forward with. And we do have some treatment capacity, so that's good. We're going to be using that. And on St. Simon's, we have the Dunbar Creek that has about 75% of its capacity being used right now, but we're going to be addressing the II, which hopefully is going to give us more capacity there. I understand the possibility of reuse, and we need to always be looking at reuse. In particular, if the saltwater aquifer, if our aquifer starts getting impacted more with saltwater intrusion. And then the areas with failing septic tanks. We've had numerous people come in here and talk to us about that. And I just think that we as a commission we need to be able to answer these people and give them something within a reasonable period of time. I'm not saying we got to have a third party restudy something. We've got enough GIS maps on some of these subdivisions that based on the number of houses, we can come up with a pretty good ballpark number and then go to somebody like Ellis Point and say, okay, it's going to cost, say, $500,000 for the whole subdivision or $750,000. And then let's see how many of those people sign up. But we as a commission I think we need to be responsive to anybody in the county that wants us to provide sewer to them. And I know our staff is busy now, but the funds have been obligated for at least permitting and locating a potential North Mainland treatment plant. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, we as a commission need to decide, do we want to pursue that, or do we want to back off and ask the county to reallocate those funds for something else? And we need to decide that before we get too far, because there is interest up there for that plant. And it is going to save, long term, it's going to save us a lot of money over having to pump the wastewater all the way through Brunswick system to the Academy Creek plant.
You know, I'll kind of agree with you, Commissioner Turnipseed. I'm on record for saying about the length of time to pump it all the way through. That's my main concern. That I think our lines are getting so far to pump it from North Main all the way through to Academy Creek. That's my concern. About the capacity, I know according to what you said about the growth, there will be some growth, and I know Academy Creek does have the capacity to sustain that growth. But I'm really concerned about the long lines of pumping that through to Academy Creek. That's my issue.
Did we not calculate the flow time?
He told me the time. But still, like I said, I just think that's a long time to go through. That's just personally what I think.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say that I have the numbers on the projected growth, current numbers, and about a year out, it's projected we'll have, say, 2020. You know, we're going to have 87,000 plus here in Glynn County. 10 years from now, we're talking about another 9,000 in Glynn County. Is all another 9,000 people. Probably a good portion of those are going to end up on St. Simon's. And
I don't know how, but okay.
I hate to say that,
Sorry.
but that's where the building's going on.
Yeah.
But St. Simon's and Southport, that's where your building's going on in Glynn County. I mean, it's not going on up at North Mainland residential. There is some.
Yeah,
So when you project ahead, and in fact, the North Mainland has never performed anywhere close to what everybody thought it was going to perform. And I personally don't see that turnaround, you know. But just going back to the numbers, I can understand the concern with sewage, and travel time from out toward North Mainland coming into Academy Creek. But we have the capacity at Academy Creek to treat everything we can send there. We have the capacity. We also have issues coming up at Academy Creek that's going to have to be addressed, and it's going to take some serious dollars. And we're going to have the capacity once we finish up the North Mainland with the SPLOST money, and we're going to make a decision on moving forward with that soon. Hopefully we do. You know, we seem to want to start getting out there ahead of ourselves, in my view, here. You know, this decision, you know, we should be talking about moving ahead with the North Mainland project, getting that thing finished. But here we are talking about maybe a wastewater treatment plant in the North Mainland that, other than sewage sitting in pipes for a little bit longer time than some, which is a problem, but some prefer, there is nothing indicated that a North Mainland wastewater treatment plant is needed in Glynn County when we have a way underused treatment plant down at Southport, and we got an undercapacity Academy Creek treatment plant. And the Academy Creek treatment plant and the Dunbar Creek treatment plant are going to need millions of dollars invested in them to get them brought up where they need to be to continue operating. And we have a permit going to be renewed, 20 whatever on Academy Creek?
2028.
2028, 10 years out. you know, before we become like, what the city and county did and got behind the ball, not behind the ball, but got on the wrong side of the curve and let things run into the ground until it was too late. They had to have a JWSC come to try to bail them out. And that's exactly what's happened here in Glynn County. We need to focus, in my view. I think the numbers will tell us as they start shaping up when we need a North Mainland treatment plan, if we ever do. But the numbers aren't there, in my view. And we need to get the North Mainland expansion upgrades done. And I believe we need to focus on what we've got to do going forward seriously with Academy Creek and Dunbar Creek, and the septic tank, transitioning from septic tanks. Ellis Point, we all know about Ellis Point. I think that we need to look at those subdivisions where we have clusters of people and poll, just what was suggested. We need to poll these folks. I'm skeptical about how many is going to want to get on. I am skeptical. My district probably has the largest amount of people on septic tanks. I say I'm talking about county commissioner. And I have not heard a person, the only person that's complained about their septic tank are ones that the state of Georgia have come in and told them they had to go to a newer one because theirs has failed. They didn't want to get on county or JWSC sewer service. Okay, they didn't want to go with a new one. They just want to get out there and fix what they had. Said it's worked fine all these years until I got roots in my lines. Now they tell me I got to have a $15,000 system put in, and I've not heard anybody complaining except, we had some people from Ellis Point come in here, said they wanted to be on JWSC. But I believe before we make any kind of major investments to get all those folks hooked up, look on your map, and out there at I-95, all the way going up towards Sterling on 341, there's a sewer line, and it has been out there for 20 years or longer. Besides the schools, who's hooked up to it? Who's hooked up to that sewer line that was put in 20 plus or longer years ago? Nobody.
I don't think we asked them either, too. So I don't think we were marketed enough to ask them that they want to hook up either. I think we've just allowed things just to be.
Well, it might be, but I'm telling you, I think they all know it's out there. But that sewer line was put in, and it's out there. It ain't nobody beating the gates down to come down here and get on hooked up to the sewer system. And there's a water line runs down Old Jessup Road behind High Hill Lakes. And do we have any customers on water line out there at High Hill Lakes? Do we? Well, we got some now. Yeah. But it was a long time for
City
you.
put that out there a long time ago.
No, I'm just telling you.
Let me address one
I'm
thing.
telling you, we can polling neighborhoods and clusters of residents to see if they'll go on. I think it'll probably give us a better idea where we need to spend our money and expand our services so we can get people hooked up. I just don't hear it. I just don't hear it out there in the community. People want to be hooked up.
Mr. Turner? Let me make a comment about Commissioner Browning's statements. First off, at the last commission meeting, we approved phase 2 of the SPLOST project, and it's proceeding on. And it's going to provide capacity for North Mainland for what we're required to provide. All I'm saying is that we need to do a study on a North Mainland plant and start proceeding in that direction if development does come. Now, the commission has spent money and has dealt with engineering firms in the past. It goes back to '08 with about a North Mainland plant. A lot of studies have been done. And there's money in the budget to do that.
that the county is in SPLOST 5. It's not saying that we're gonna build a North Mainland plant, but once the study's done, and we as a commission can decide what is gonna be our schedule for that. But I know that there's interest up there, and we know that Trade Winds is there. And to assume that Academy Creek plant is gonna be able to handle all of North Mainland is just not realistic in the long term. And so, all I'm asking is that we need to consider a study up there.
And I agree with that. I think it's too big of an issue not to study. I mean, we're going to have to put some investment in Academy Creek, and maybe some of that can be deferred towards the North Mainland. Maybe if the capacity and continuing to grow at Academy Creek, as much investment it needs. So there might be some offset costs there. I think it's worth looking at.
When you say a study, you talking about actually spending money on
I'm sure it would cost
consultants?
something. Yeah.
You're talking about spending money on consultants today when there's no indication? I mean, I know we can talk about, I don't know who you getting your information from about interest in the North Mainland treatment plant. I know we have some interest in, the industrial park out there. I say we do. I've been sitting on a board over there for years, and we keep saying that we think we got somebody coming, and they ain't showed up either. It's just like people ain't. I mean, I'm out in amongst the people in Glynn County a lot more than a lot of folks are, only because I represent a bunch of them. But the capacity that we're getting with the North Mainland sewer project will handle trade winds. It will handle that. And that's what the Board of Commissioners has sent us money over there to take care of. So that's being taken care of. Now, I know your biggest issue is that, well, the sewer might sit in the line 2 or 3 days longer than we want it to. I understand that. But I don't think that rises. I think this is distracting this board, focus from going about and doing planning on the things that we have in hand right now, which is we got a Dunbar Creek treatment plant, we got a Academy Creek treatment plant. We're talking about trying to get more customers on. That's going to take money. We just sat here and fiddled with the idea. We didn't know if we wanted to spend a full $275,000 out at Southport because we may not have enough people that want to pay the tap fees. Okay, some of that discussion was going on over here. And then we're talking about maybe spending money on a study, which no way you're going to justify putting a waste treatment plant. I can't see spending money on a study just because we think there might be a need for it one day.
Well, I think SPLOST 5 was voted on by the county, everybody in the county, and it has $1.5 million in there for that study and for site selection.
If I'm correct, we've requested that 1.5 be provided to us for execution to improve Academy Creek.
And that's why I'm saying that we need to decide as a commission, do we want to have a study done for the North Mainland plant?
Okay.
And that's why I'm saying, that's why I brought this up at the last meeting, and I think we need to decide that as a commission.
Well, I don't know where everybody else is. I know where Commissioner Browning is. I don't think we do. I don't think that we're ever gonna have that kind of growth up there that's gonna justify a plant. I put the map back up of comprehensive, and you can see how much of the south portion of the county is an olive color, and that's where the growth is going to go. I don't see in the light green areas, which is conservation areas, that there's going to be a lot of growth in those areas. So I just don't see a need for a North Mainland plant just based on the comprehensive plan that the county's developed.
Well, there's one engineering firm has already completed a lot of studies and evaluations for this plant to date, and it was assisting the commission with getting it permitted. They have continued to request to advise on extending the waste load allocations. And my recommendation is that we go back and negotiate a fee with them for evaluating the feasibility of a North Mainland plant evaluation and go into the things you just discussed. If the land's not developable and it's not feasible, then so be it. But we need to have a study done, I think, to evaluate this. And it's going to also say what's going to be happening with Academy Creek so far as that's concerned. They've already done that. Some of that's been done in the master plan, and it'd be that same firm. If we could negotiate a fee with them, that's acceptable to us as a commission.
Mr. Chairman, since this is a discussion item, and since Commissioner Ben Turnipseed is determined to build a North Mainland wastewater treatment plant, I request that we just end this discussion today because we're not going to vote on it, and I'll bring some more information to another meeting when we can have a more detailed discussion about it, okay?
Well, I agree with Ben. I would like to see us move forward with some sort of, and I realize we're not voting on it today, but I just want to get my opinion out there. I think we should look forward. Study it. I'm not saying I'm determined to build a plant by any means, but I do think it's too big of a decision not to make sure we get it right.
Okay.
I agree as well that we should take a look at a North Mainland water treatment plant.
This is what I don't understand, Commissioners. I've got a map up here that shows the areas of potential growth, and we're only talking about a North Mainland sewer plant. Maybe we ought to, if we're gonna do a study, why don't we do a study of where we in the future may need sewer plants? And not have what just dedicated to North Mainland. I don't understand this fixation on North Mainland.
Well, that sounds good. I mean, North Mainland would be included in that study. I mean,
The study would be, where do we need sewer plants in 2050?
well, I can see that too.
Based on the population data I've got, and it's as accurate, I guess, as anybody else's.
Right. Well,
We don't need it.
It all is projections. So, we could sit here and say, we're gonna have this, and then 20 years later it'll be a population explosion, and then we say, oh, we should have done something. So I do understand that fact, but basically, if we're gonna do a study as to where we need something, where we need it, I think North Mainland should be included as well. I mean,
I didn't say that it shouldn't be included. I just said, where do we need it?
Well, that's
I
almost
think North Mainland's a subjective term. I mean, whether North Mainland's at the very end of the county or
to the west,
halfway across the 51st percentile across the county line. I mean,
Or
it's a
I think
subjective term.
to the
North
west.
is, north is kind of northwest. I mean, whatever you call it, I think we're saying the same thing you are. We're just saying the word North Mainland. And part of the North Mainland study would say, is this precluding us from having to expand Academy Creek? So it's not like we're asking to spend extra money. We're just saying, where do we spend the money that we have to spend? Do we expand Academy? Do we renovate Academy? Or do we apply that towards something
Well,
else?
We're gonna find out Academy is about, what, 50% use?
Well, you're saying it needs major upgrades. So
Well,
this
it
might
needs
defer some of those major
upgrades
upgrades.
Because it hasn't been taken care of.
basically, I think
This
we're
might
going
defer
to
some of that.
end up talking about funding and actually where this funding is coming from. We talk about SPLOST, but basically that is something we got to really figure out. It is not something that we have money in hand, because it's not really. We don't have it in hand. So that's something else that we have to deal with. Once we deal with that, I think it'll all flush out.
We do need to look at all the different options for wastewater treatment needs and where those would be located. And if we're looking out in the year 2050, we should be thinking about things like, what's our vision for the county? And Brunswick is a beautiful city.
Yes.
We have us a nice city here. We have a lot of character. We have a lot of older homes. We're going to have a lot of development. We'd love to have a waterfront location for tourists, visitors. And in 2050, it'd be nice to have that. Now, do we want to take all the growth that's going to occur up on that map and flow all of that sewage down to the center of the city of Brunswick? Or do we want to start planning for the future and start moving the growth, moving the sewage outward to a more rural area. So if we're talking about upgrades for water treatment facilities, we should be looking at different options to compare those costs with the other locations where we could send that wastewater to be treated. I just support looking at all the different options. It's not just North Mainland, it's all the different areas. But North Mainland shouldn't be left out, and we do have monies that are in SPLOST 5 that have been designated to look at that.
And Academy Creek does have limited land for future expansion.
I understand that.
Yes.
Well, I think that we can, when you're talking about using Academy Creek going forward in terms of capacity, we're operating at only 50%. You know, with a, I'm not going to say state-of-the-art system because we don't have a state-of-the-art system, but if we do the upgrades we have, we'll have plenty of capacity going forward. I'm not saying by any means that I'm against looking ahead. In my own view, I have looked ahead, and what I'm saying is I can't see that we need to be concentrating on spending money on studies in a look ahead for a wastewater treatment plant in any other part of the county. It's not just North Mainland. I'm with you guys. You know, if we're going to look at something, you know, we should always try to look at all the county if that's where we need to go. But I just can't see spending money when we have great needs at 2 wastewater treatment plants, and studying something that I can't see is going to be justified, knowing what I know. My knowledge may be way off, but knowing what I know with the upgrades we're making again on the North Mainland, and I'm with you on the fact that, you know, if we develop all that out there eventually, sending all that all the way down where it's got to go, it is crazy. What I'm saying is that I don't think that's going to develop as quickly as you think it is. And I think that every penny we should put into taking what we already have and trying to get ahead of the curve, if you will, and get everything upgraded, because whatever scheme we come up with at Academy Creek, it's going to cost millions of dollars to do. It's going to cost it. We've already been having discussions here, and we got off track off that. And have we not? I mean, we have, and I'm looking ahead. I think I'm looking ahead. You know, things that we have in hand that you know, we kind of get off. You know, our focus gets shifted over here and over there, but we have some great needs in the system that is sitting here right now today without putting up any more structures. We got capacity. I'd say let's get all that capacity fixed up and upgraded, and then we'll look out there. You know,
Well, I think we're gonna end up looking out there sooner than
we're gonna
later,
look out there.
because the city gonna develop the south end. Liberty Harbor is gonna get developed. We can also do some on the marshland, so it's gonna be coming in. So we're gonna take up some of that capacity.
Good.
But as you said, we could debate this all day, gentlemen. So if we wanna, I think we need to, if you want to, Mr. Chairman, to have this discussion, continue to have this discussion, unless someone needs to
I
do
don't
something
see
like
a requirement now to vote on any studies.
that. No, what I'm saying, I don't think we are through talking about
No.
this issue
I
yet.
think we probably discussed enough today.
Well, yeah, probably today is enough, unless,
You know, we need to look at it, and
let's discuss it
the
next.
staff and the executive director need to look and see and start thinking about, you know, maybe what it would look like in 2050. But I think the primary purpose right now for this commission and what we're trying to do is fix what's broken now.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to see us identify a couple of subdivisions, and for staff to come up, figure out a way that we can poll the residents, say like in Ellis Point. You know, poll everybody out there and see what their feelings are about getting on JWSC sewer system and just see
I
what we
think
learn
we
from
can
the
give
people.
the staff the requirement to see what kind of interest and where for septic,
So
to replace septic systems.
so let me get this straight. Do we need to do a broad analysis of the county, or are we talking about
No.
a couple of specific?
I'm not talking about, I mean, in my view, I think you need to, we've already had some people from Ellis Point come in here and ask, okay, and you have a pretty much built-out subdivision there. Actually, you got 2 or 3 different places. You got Ellis Point, you got Anderson Estates right there built to it. But all that area right in there on that side of 341, between 341, 303 and the river and the marshes, if we could do a polling and find out how many folks would like to get on our service, give us an idea if we, just how serious the people are.
I think when the first question they're gonna ask is, what's it gonna cost us? So we as a commission we need to come up with some way that we can tell them a projected cost.
Well,
If
the
it's just
cost
gonna
to
be,
them
if
would
it's
be
just
the
gonna be,
tap
the
fee,
if
right?
it's just gonna be
Well,
the tap fee,
No,
it
'cause
might be more,
There'll be
so.
some investment on the assets at their homes as well. I mean, there'll be a tap fee and, if it's grinder pumps or
Yeah.
depending on the,
I would like to see the staff present to us a map of Glynn County with the TIS that shows all of the customers and show us the areas without sewer. And I think they can do that real easy.
That are basically
And
septic.
then we can hit and say, okay, this one, this one, this one, this one. And we can determine if we're gonna have pressure systems or gravity systems or what, and we can come up with a ballpark price for that, so we can tell them what it's gonna cost. And in the meantime, we'll come up with some kind of form that we can mail to these customers if we want to gauge their interest.
Okay, I think this is, instead of us trying to put it together for them, let the staff look at it. And I think they have a sense of what the commission's looking for on servicing failing septic systems.
And I think if we're going to discuss the North Mainland or Mid Mainland, whatever you want to call it, West Mainland treatment plant at a future meeting, I think we need to have at least an idea of what the cost to do the proposal is. Because to your point, I mean, you don't want to spend money. I don't know if that's $5,000 or $500,000. So I think we need to have staff reach out to someone that did the master plan, whoever that was, and say, what would you charge us to come in here and evaluate the need, evaluate the cost, and give us a proposal? And I think that way we need to have that so we can discuss this further at the next meeting, because this is, this is too big a decision not to at least evaluate. And, to your point, we don't want to spend millions of engineering dollars, but in my impression, that's not what it's going to cost to do a proposal. So we need to know what is it going to cost to do a proposal so we can eventually put this to bed by voting on it, because we need to at some point put this to bed and quit just saying, well, let's discuss it. We need to, discuss it, put it to bed one way or the other.
Okay. I think we're ready to go on to the next discussion item, which will be sewer plant.
Good afternoon, Commission. We did,
Did you get that off?
again, good afternoon, Commissions. This particular brief here is out of cycle right now. We normally do it on the second briefing, but we skip one. So before you have up to date to August, although it's October 9, September's actually not been complete yet, but we are talking about August, the most recent update of data. And there's something added other than, we normally discuss the flow, the effluent concentration, removal efficiency, and rainfall. We added this month, Mr. Burris and myself, water meters, 1 million gallons used per month. and also sludge to the landfill.
We did update the rainfall totals per the request last time to not necessarily use the specific gauges at the plant. The rainfall totals were updated for those totals for the National Weather Service sites that are closest to each plant. You'll see that on the Academy Creek one, there's the yellow bar. That is actually during September of 17, which is when our Irma hit. The National Weather Service site went down during Irma, so those totals are clearly not accurate if you look at that compared to the other two rainfalls during that time, because we clearly got more than 4 inches of rain during that month. So that was because the site went down during all of that. So
Which month?
September
September
17th.
17th.
When Irma came through.
When Irma came through, so that number is incorrect, but that's the number they had on their website because of the.
Would it be a lot of trouble to put a little rain gauge at each of the plants?
We have it now, but last meeting we discussed this. It was, we need to look at the wider view instead of what just happens at the plant, because if it.
Oh, that's
if
true.
it rains in one part of town and not the other, so this was the National Weather Service averages for the area.
Yeah, we get those bursts of rain in just different locations. You know, you can have sunshine on the plant right out the gate, and you got it pouring down.
Mark, at Academy Creek, basin number 1, aeration basin number 1 was taken down,
Yes, sir.
and we've inspected it. What was the shape of that interior of that basin?
We thought it was in pretty much fair to good.
Good.
Yeah. We pulled 2 aeration motors. We kind of took some pictures down underneath. We looked at the sludge that accumulated in the bottom that we trying to get out. We about ready to button it back up and try to put it online.
So it's pretty safe to assume that the other basin is going to be just in as good a shape, and since this is the oldest basin.
Yes, sir. This is the older basin.
So that's good news, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
And when is the other filter supposed to be there, the next pilot
That hasn't
filter?
been scheduled yet, because they're still waiting on the existing trial to end, that the unit is still under trial, so whenever it gets over, then they'll tell us when they can bring it to us, because they may have to do some work to it after they get done with it.
Can you notify us, commissioners, in case we want to go out there and see it while it's in operation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Mark. July 2018,
28
rainfall.
rainfall.
Tell me again, maximum inches and total inches.
The total, the max inch was the max inch for that one period that happened, and the total inches for the accumulation of the month.
So max in one day versus total for the month.
And that was recorded at Academy Creek?
That was recorded at the National Weather Service site for the area, yes, sir.
I have a rain gauge too. I recorded 12 inches at my house. I mean, it's an official rain gauge.
Sure.
Right.
So, and then in, that was July, then August, that's closer. I recorded 8 inches. I had a total of 20 inches at my house in those 2 months, so it does vary around the county
Yes, it does.
pretty good bit.
Yes, it does.
And September, I was a little over 3 inches, so those, but July, depending on where you were, we might ought to have our own rain gauges scattered around.
Were we gonna get the Panova flows on the Academy Creek?
The flows come to,
Yeah.
you want those?
Separate, as a separate.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. We'll have it on the next one. We'll go back and post those. Sorry about that.
I had just a couple of quick questions. I don't know if I've pestered you guys before, but on Dunbar and at Southport, it looks like we got our pH gauges reversed. We got a higher pH leaving than coming in.
Those are not reversed. We went out and rechecked, and the pH leaving the plants are higher at Dunbar and Southport, which is contrary to what you would expect. I cannot confirm this. The working theory of what's happening is that the septic sewage that is getting there from the long retention times is gassing off in the aeration basins. That doesn't occur at Academy Creek because you have enclosed aeration basins and it gets re-entrained. So we believe it's from sulfates and carbon dioxide gassing off in the aeration basin.
Are we adding alkalinity to these two plants?
We are not.
Is something have to do with the pipes that we?
No, sir, it's got to do with the characteristics of the sludge. When
Right.
the sludge gets old,
Inside the process.
gas bubbles get entrained in the sludge, and it gets to the plant, and you get, it's not artificially low, but somewhat artificially low pH readings because you got all those gas bubbles entrained. When the air hits it, they break up and the gas is released. Like I said, I can't 100% confirm that, but that's about the only thing that makes any sense.
Theory.
Any
Anything else?
further questions for the briefing? Or you haven't covered Southport yet?
Oh, Southport's your last, actually, I haven't covered them individually.
Okay.
Southport, I mean, like I say, it's, flow at Southport's less than 400,000, well, right at 400,000. Definitely can use more growth out there, but plant runs pretty good on a day-to-day basis. We don't use much water because we have water reuse in order to clean the clarifiers and any other vessels that we need clean. Right now, we man it with 2 personnel. We can with 1. We some often do sometime because of some personnel issues that we have. But we man it 8 hours a day, approximately about 12 hours a day, 11 hours a day. And then we put it on skater. We're on skater for the rest of the evening.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand the issue of the personnel again.
Well, we got one individual that's been sick, that's been ill, and he's been stationed out. He's been positioned out there, so he's hardly ever there right now. But Alvin, who's actually the supervisor that looks over the outside plants, he goes out there once a day along with the other individual that's there. It don't take much to man the facility. Just somebody. I have a Class 2 on-site operator right now that's very knowledgeable about.
What you're saying is we've reduced the manning at it
Well,
because an individual's sick?
Yes, sir. We can't.
Okay.
You know.
Does that cause any change in the numbers?
No, that had nothing to do with the numbers. I'm sorry. I just brought that up.
Okay.
No, that has nothing to do with the numbers.
But it's a pretty self-sufficient plant.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It runs self-sufficient pretty much, most of the time, 90% of the time. Although we have a plant check in the late evenings, even though we on skater, we send an individual out there to walk through the plant and look it over and jot down some data.
I got a question with as far as Dunbar. We were doing the I&I to make sure the rainwater thing. How's that coming?
We're doing
Trying to to make sure that we're not having so much rainwater getting into the system.
yeah, what we're doing right now, we're preparing an RFP to follow up, like we talked about, for Dunbar. And
Okay.
measure do the smoke testing and dye
Right.
testing. And as soon as we get that RFP done, we'll be pushing it out. And we've got the pieces, basically the guts of it.
Okay. All right. I just want to keep that for us. Okay. Good. Thanks.
Any more questions, gentlemen?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a discussion on backflow.
Damn, man.
And good afternoon, gentlemen. For the sake of time, I would even be willing to table this. However, in this situation, there are some customers that are going to be affected by this discussion. As you get some information about the program, that may lead into an approval item in a future meeting. So we want to go ahead and get this covered. So my goal today is to give you a broad view of the backflow program and outline some changes that would make the program better. In particular, some of you have received questions from customers about what appears to be a sudden change in policy where we're asking for a device known as an RPZ or a double check to be installed. And I'll show you in just a few minutes what that means and what we could do to possibly solve some potential problems that are coming down the line. Providing a means to ensure that our customers get water that's of the highest quality was outlined in the Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974. And in 1985, the City of Brunswick amended its ordinance to specifically mandate that we would have a backflow program. And haven't gotten the exact time period, but the county would have likely done the same thing around that time too. So in July of 2001, I started with the City of Brunswick as the cross-connection control specialist before moving on to other duties. But that position is now known as Backflow Compliance Coordinator. I was tasked back then with making sure that any processes within private plumbing don't affect the public water supply. We essentially perform site inspection and review construction plans to ensure that our customers are protected from each other. There are plenty of textbook examples of pollutants and contaminants making their way into a public distribution system and causing sickness or even death in some cases. We have no interest in the JWSC becoming part of the latest textbook example. Maricel Lindsay, who's sitting in the back with Angel, Maricel's on the right, she was selected as our backflow compliance coordinator in December of 2017. From around 2001 until this past December, we didn't have a staff member dedicated solely to backflow compliance. It was a responsibility given to various staff members to keep us up with inspection reports, and we needed to have somebody that was running that program full-time, essentially sending out the letters requiring an annual inspection and then processing those letters as they come back in. And what prompted us to quickly act on filling a need to have a full-time staffer was a report from Anaheim, California in September of 2017 in which 9 people got sick from a bacteria present in the water system at Disneyland. So what exactly is a backflow preventer? A backflow preventer comes in about a dozen varieties, but they all serve the same purpose: prevent water from traveling from the premise to the distribution system using check valves. The devices have a wide range of costs depending on the associated hazard. At the least, all connections should be protected by what's known as a dual check, this device here. We typically install this non-testable device in the meter box and replace it when the meter is replaced. Next up, we have a better device like a double check, which is testable and preferred for situations where you may not want to drink the water, but it won't necessarily make you sick if you do. So keep in mind, all residential connections at a minimum dual check. When we start getting into higher hazards, we start talking double check and higher hazard devices. Lastly, we have the highest hazard protection device, such as a reduced pressure zone. So this RPZ that you'll hear asked about commonly. This device is designed to discharge water out of a port on the bottom to guarantee that processed water will not enter our system. To prevent that port from getting defeated, these devices have to be installed above ground. So you'll commonly drive around Glynn County and see these installed either at the right-of-way or close to the building, and often have a hot box or some type of fiberglass enclosure. Sometimes it's made out of chicken wire or whatever. There's no standard on how to cover this up, but the more we have of these, the more likely we'll have problems during winter freezes if the temperature gets too low, if they're not insulated. So there's presently no standard that's enforced, but we will be, for this coming winter season, notifying customers that have this type of device that's above ground that it would need to be insulated so there's less risk of them leaking and causing us to face a lot of leak adjustments in the customer service area. These devices are intended to protect you from back pressure, where the pressure inside the house or building is higher than the system pressure, and back siphonage, where a main break down the road pulls the contaminant or pollutant into the distribution system when the pressure drops downstream. In the absence of explicit backflow preventer requirements, the EPA and EPD put the responsibility of determining how to protect our customers from each other onto us. In an ideal world, we could mitigate every water connection hazard by requiring the installation of an RPZ, the highest hazard device. In the real world, however, very few connections require that level of protection, and customers are pushing back on an existing requirement to install an RPZ on all commercial locations, pools with autofills, and irrigation systems. The focus of the backflow program should be upon known or potential hazards, not possible or probable concerns. Residential accounts are insignificant hazards compared to industrial or non-residential customers. Prompted by discussions with customers, with some of you, with our attorney, and with Mr. Junkin, Maricel and I have developed a very reasonable approach to determining the protection need based on the risk. Part of your handout includes a table that identifies the standard risks associated with particular facilities, and there is a nationwide understanding of what type of device would be needed. But as I said, the EPA and the EPD, the federal and the state level, do not mandate specific devices needed for a particular hazard. It would be so much easier if they did, but they don't. None of the changes that we're going to consider here will require a change to the ordinance or the program document, though the rate resolution reference to irrigation will be in conflict. So specifically, what I'm asking for that we would put on the agenda for a future meeting would be to consider ignoring the line item that states that an irrigation meter has this fee and a regular domestic meter has this fee. So we'll talk some more about that. In your hands, that table has a column that shows the minimum hazard type and the minimum backflow requirements. To simplify the issue, we want to review all residential and non-residential customers using the same standards and let Maricel perform a site inspection to confirm what's on the plans. We're presently requiring all irrigation and pools with autofill to have an RPZ installed, but we want to lessen those restrictions because the type of protection doesn't fit the hazard. By the way, there's very little academic or operational evidence that pools or irrigation systems create a substantial increase in risk, but we appear to be overcompensating by requiring them to have the highest standard device. It makes management of the program really simple if you make everybody have the highest device. But first, let's look at some assumptions. What was brought up in here, and I can't recall exactly who I can give this quote to, but we have no idea what residential accounts presently do on their own domestic meter that may potentially increase the hazard. We considered that. No permit is presently required to tie irrigation systems or pools to the domestic meter. It gets done whether we like it or not. There's no means to survey that aside from walking door to door and invading somebody's private property to determine if it's there. No permit is presently required to install direct injection chemical pumps on existing irrigation systems or pools. It gets done whether we like it or not. For the record, it gets done very rarely. It used to be a very expensive system. It's probably becoming more common because you can get it at Home Depot for less than the cost of a Honda Civic. It used to be very expensive, but now it's become less expensive. You get the idea. So that hazard is there. The hazard typically presented by irrigation or pools without direct injection, which presently required an RPZ, is less than that of a fire suppression system with stagnant water, which only requires a double check. So not to belabor the point, but you have an RPZ, the highest standard device required for a risk that's kind of one of those, well, it may hurt you. But for a fire suppression system, which has stagnant water all the time because the backflow preventer, unless it's in use and actually dumps on the property interior, the backflow preventer keeps that stagnant water locked in tight on that fire suppression system. If anybody's ever been through a fire inside a building, when that water comes out, it's oftentimes black. That's the point I'm getting at, is that you don't want to drink that water either. The intention would be to eliminate the requirement that all irrigation meter applications include the charge for installing an RPZ. At best, we would break even presently installing an RPZ with the domestic meter set in it. So if somebody goes into the lobby right now and asks for an irrigation system to be installed at their home, we are at best breaking even. We are potentially losing money. So that's not a business that we've been excited to be in. It would be less... It would be more advantageous for us, in other words, to turn that business over to private plumbers or those that have a backflow testing license. You can get that independently of being a plumber. Also eliminate the requirement that all pool applications indicate RPZ on the plans. On pool systems without autofill, the dual check at the meter will suffice. Think of it this way, well, with autofill, we could require the use of an atmospheric vacuum breaker. That's something that can be picked up at Home Depot or Lowe's, one of those home improvement stores, and it could be installed by the property owner, plumber, or a pool contractor closer to the house or the irrigation valves than the street. This is not ideal. By the way, this photo, I have to give credit to a fellow down in Florida that we found has been addressing these issues with an overly aggressive utility in Florida. These devices are easy to remove and in some areas have become products of theft. So in the middle of the night, you could just walk down the street with these very well exposed devices, cut and run, and then you have some brass you can take down to the recycling center. A dual check is going to be installed on the meter box, and a non-testable atmospheric vacuum breaker could be installed by the property owner, and then Maricel could go out and inspect that in order to get them to pass the CO, or to basically pass the inspection side of being able to get a pool or an irrigation system. But that's only where we're told, because like I said, this isn't necessarily critical on the irrigation side. On the pool side, we are getting those inspection requests. Glynn County and the City of Brunswick do communicate with us when somebody intends to put in a pool. So it wouldn't be a stretch for Maricel and the plan review team to identify those that have a need, and then she can go inspect that. I'll try to keep that commentary brief because it's boring, but the idea is we'd like to see less of these RPZs on the side of the street, and we would like to have non-testable devices where we can. On all new irrigation meter installations, Maricel, the backflow compliance coordinator, would inspect the setup within 30 days to ensure that the appropriate device has been installed. Failure to comply would result in disconnection of the irrigation meter, but no annual inspection would be required. And such as with the irrigation systems, when we were talking about reuse water earlier, keep in mind the utilities in Florida that do use reuse water have, or even in the cases where they use well water, where there might be a cross connection, an interconnection. If there's reuse water plumbed to a facility or a house, then we would absolutely demand to have a testable device, because there would be that risk of the less treated reuse water getting interconnected into the distribution system. So we would keep that in mind if we ever became a reuse water utility. For your notes. All pool permit applications, even now, get inspected by the plan review team. We have a pool inspection form indicating that they would not install a system for direct injection of chemicals. If they do, an RPZ would be required. The interesting thing about an irrigation and a pool direct injection system is, for the most part, I have a pool at the house. When the kids come out of there, water comes out with them. That everybody that's ever been in a swimming pool, whether you meant to or not, you're drinking the water. I have a saltwater pool, but even if you have a chlorinated pool, the level of chlorine in that pool, as long as it's not burning your eyes, is typically not in an area where it's going to be dangerous to your neighbors if that gets back siphoned into the system, or back pressure in the case of having an autofill. It could happen, but in the grand scheme of things, your service is going to be out once the pressure drops, and then you're not going to be consuming so much pool water that it's any more dangerous than somebody swimming in it. A backflow inspection fee will apply for field review of both new irrigation and pool construction. We have that fee in the list of the fees for the backflow inspection, so we can already accommodate that. For existing residential customers with irrigation or pool, a backflow inspection will be prompted by submission of plans. On all non-residential connections, they'll be reviewed annually. A change in use may require a change in protection. Any testable device will continue to require annual testing. And here's where it gets interesting. This is a decision I'd love for you guys to make if we moved in this direction. If an annual test comes due and the customer refuses to test it, and trust me, that is happening on a daily basis, where somebody that even paid us for the device to be installed claimed that they didn't understand that they would have to have it tested annually, and we're not going to do that for them. We would give them the option, as long as the risk is not such that RPZ or that testable device would be required, we would give them the option to remove that device at their expense and put in a dual check, the style that goes inside the meter box. At that point, we would know that they are a low-risk customer and have no more risk than a single-family residence anyway, even if they have a pool or an irrigation system. In the end, I believe these methods are going to be more than adequate to protect our customers. My suggestion is that we consider the known risks and meet our customers' desire to more consistently select the device for the hazard. That would require amending the reference to the irrigation meter price difference in the rate resolution. The customer would then have to pay a certified backflow preventer tester to install a device that may be required and tested annually if needed. So even if we don't, on an irrigation system, require that we install the device, we would still require a device to be installed if it's high risk. If there's direct injection of chemicals, or in the case of a corporate policy, many corporate facilities require a testable device regardless for all of their connections, and we would accommodate that. Any questions?
So these changes are retrospective as well as for future, or are these?
Anybody that has a device, yes, sir, I would like to say if they're given the opportunity to remove the device at their expense, you have to think, in the case of an RPZ on something like a 2-inch connection, if they paid $300, $400 for a device to be installed, and then they have to pay anywhere between $75 and we see as high as $300 for an annual inspection fee, then the customer may choose to pull the expensive device, put in a dual check that costs perhaps $40, and then from there on out, they wouldn't have to have the device tested annually. And
If somebody has something that's under this, though, and they were having to go up, so let's just say the first one, car wash, automated, had to currently have the dual check, and we require RPZ, we're going to make them go back and replace one, or is this just if we built a new one? Or is that a moot point because that's not a change?
that's inspected at the point of turning in a building permit. So if there's any remodel and we inspect that facility and determine that it had a dual check before, and that does happen where, and in cases where it originally was one type of business and it has since changed. And there's so many changes that we oftentimes can't keep up. If somebody turns in a permit application and it appears that the risk is now higher than the device that's installed, we do require them to upgrade the device. Yes, sir.
Fair enough. Hey, just curious. At one point, we just talked conceptually. We never did do anything with it, but conceptually that, you know, some of these like small restaurants who only have one site location, instead of them having to find somebody who's certified, do it, have that charged to them, and
Yes,
then
sir.
send us a report and, you know, and then manually handle it. We talked about potentially us doing it and charging them a fee and it kind of being a revenue center for us. Is that something we explored further, or did we drop that?
We tossing the numbers around, the challenge of getting staff available for that would make it a very tough decision to consider a profit center. Simply don't have the staff available. We at one point, for instance, had the half a dozen staff, let's say. I believe the number may have been around that. We had a trainer come down from the Georgia Water and Wastewater Institute and gave that training in-house for our staff to be able to test our devices. Because you have to think, every single pumping station we have, every water station we have, we personally have a testable device, an RPZ, the highest hazard. And we don't have enough staff to even keep up with testing our own devices, so we're in the process of bidding that out so that we would have a contractor go around and test our devices. You could feasibly have somebody that their full-time job was just to test our devices.
Yeah, and that's where I was thinking, and I'm just talking, again, conceptually, but,
Yes, sir.
you know, we probably have 70 of them, and it's, you know,
We have closer to 200. Oh, you personally at the hospital?
yeah, right, I mean.
Correct.
We
That's what you're
probably have
saying.
70, and we get 70 letters every year that say, hey, go get it tested, send us a letter, and we go get 70 of them tested. We send y'all 70 letters, and then, or send us 70 letters.
Yes, sir.
And then invariably, you know, one of them falls through the cracks, and we have to go resubmit, you know, the information, or, you know, it would be a lot easier for us, and we're paying somebody anyhow to just tack it onto the bill and say, hey, we're testing yours in April. You know, we're going to come out, test it, tack it onto the bill, and we pay it and never be the wiser, versus having to coordinate with somebody and go hire somebody and find somebody. And so, you know, maybe the math isn't there. I don't know. I just didn't know if we looked at it to see if it was possible that we'd have our own internal people that just did that across the board.
I don't know if that's been considered on that level, but perhaps that's something, since we haven't finalized that RFP and distributed it, that might be something that we look at as well, because you have X amount. You think about the quantity that we have at a facility like Fletsy.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a challenge for them as well, but
And
they may
for a
bid that
small
out
restaurant
themselves.
that doesn't have anybody who does that, I mean, they
Right.
get it, and it's Greek to them. At least we're pretty familiar with it when we get it. A small restaurant, they get the letter and like, what is this?
Right.
How in the world do I go about finding somebody to test the backflow? And they're forced into Google trying to, you know, find somebody.
Well,
And
we actually send out a letter that includes a list of the testers that have
Okay.
notified us. We certainly don't eliminate somebody from the list of available testers, but we provide a list as an assistance to the customer. And the high number that I gave you that's in the I think it's as high as $350 range, it turns out this guy wants to be listed on the directory, basically, but he is contracted by a national chain, and he travels here as part of his route to test that facility. And If you wanted him to use him at the hospital, for instance, he would charge you the $300 rate. Perhaps that would vary based on the volume that he had, but that's why there's such a large variance. The $75 at the low, and that may have changed recently, but nevertheless, we don't put the price on there because we have no control over it, but we do provide a directory of a listing of those certified testers that want to be listed in the directory. Any other questions? So essentially, my intent in giving you that broad view of the backflow program is to, in the next meeting, I've given you enough information to think about the hazards that we're associating with that device, but we specifically need to remove the reference to irrigation backflow preventer from the rate resolution, or I suppose, is it even a possibility to just say we're not using that line item anymore? Do we have to amend the rate resolution, vote to do so, in order to move forward?
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions? Further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready?
Yes,
All right.
sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the monthly capital project update. I'm happy to answer any questions on here, but I'd like to point out at least three items on the list here. You'll see project number 808. That is the new project, Friendly Express, which was approved at the last commission meeting. That's our cooperative agreement with the folks that are developing Friendly Express number 71. And as recently as a few minutes ago, Bullpen, you'll notice Pump Station 3114 improvements. That's the Southport Parkway project, which was just approved by the Board of Commissioners. We'll now use, next report, you'll see that move actually up into the capital list, project list with a number. And you may notice Mansfield Street, project 421, in the completed
All right.
box down at the very bottom. We're very proud of that. That one's finally down there in the completion box. So do want to point that out. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything in particular.
When's the Magnolia Park engineering gonna be finished?
That one, the survey work was finished. Their engineer is working on the design right now, from what we understand from the city. Completion, I've got 270 days in there. That's anticipated from when the design's completed, but we'll get an update from them on the design work.
What's the city's schedule for paving the streets? And they're repaving the streets, right?
Excuse me?
What's your schedule as far as repaving the streets in Magnolia Park?
I think my engineer was supposed to get with Todd so we could do it all at the same time. I think they're gonna start sometime in January, I believe. That's what I believe it is. So they're supposed to get with you so you can do it simultaneously, so you don't have to go in there and dig it all up again. So
So they need to be moving ahead then if we're gonna be paving in January.
Time is of the essence. Yes, sir.
I'll get my engineer to get with you, Todd.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Also, I guess we are getting ready to do something with Mary Ross Park.
Yes, we are.
So,
Or, excuse me, yes, the city is. We had a meeting this week
okay.
with Mr. Bennett. He came, or it was last Friday, almost a week ago. And he came in and gave us an update on the project there, and we reviewed a couple water and sewer things.
Sure.
Look forward to seeing that project.
We authorized the contractor.
That's correct. They're
We
supposed to
approved
start
the
on that.
contract on
The 15th is the notice to proceed date for that work to begin. We had the pre-con on that this morning, so they'll be moving out there
Okay.
next week.
On 501 Alder Circle, that's the CPOMS. And I understand that might have changed a little bit, but that's under SPLOST 5 also. Where are we on that? We provided some for CPOMS.
Commissioner Terp, see, that ties back into the other project. You're talking about the North Mainland project. We've made a request. Our attorneys submitted verbiage to give us basically control of the funds that were allocated for the 3 water and sewer projects on SPLOST 2005, of which this is one of them. If we can get that through the review process with Aaron and get it, if he's happy, it'll go on the, I guess, be circulated through the city and the county for changes to ordinances and operating agreement change, and it should give us the authority to execute projects with those funds as is, which, by the way, the discussion of, free that money up for something else on the North Mainland plant design or site prep, it's a fairly complex issue that Mr. Dorminey could explain, and it would not be as simple as saying we want to, since we're not doing this, we want to do this. It would have to go back through election or some other process for it to be, redirected, because, again, SPLOST is funny about, if they define it as this is how you're going to use it, that's it.
So you're saying the 1.5 for the North Mainland plant has to be used for that then?
It has to be, and the way it's worded in there, we feel comfortable that if we decided to use it for engineering assistance to get the Academy Creek, it is a mainland plant fix, so we think the wording is close enough that we could use it if we had control of the money to help that. But if we decide as a commission to do something different, it'll fit it as well.
One thing we're talking about now, can we be given can y'all provide the commission what capacity we received from phase 1 of the North Mainland project? What capacity we had after that, and then what capacity we're going to have after phase 2, which is what we approved at the last commission meeting. So we'll have a feel for what kind of capacity we're generating for the North Mainland.
Just a summary of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Is there any other discussion? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Executive Director, do you have any update?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to go over a few things very quickly. I want to express that I appreciate the commission allowing me to participate in the WEFTEC conference these last few days, and Commissioner Terpseed was there with me, and I think he'll vouch for the fact that it's an excellent opportunity to learn a lot about what's going on, the opportunities to improve things and to remedy problems that are common problems amongst a lot of utilities across the country. And this is a national conference where folks come to share their successes and therefore opportunities for the rest of us to learn from their hard knocks, especially when the big utilities come in. It's one that, as I may have mentioned to a couple of you earlier today, it's one that I think you would all enjoy and benefit from as if you could make time to attend that. And to that end, there is a utility management conference coming up in Nashville in February that's made by the major trade organizations for water and sewer that's more geared towards this level of people, the big picture thinking and solutions and opportunities. It might be an excellent one for any of the commissioners to attend, and if any of you are interested, I'll be glad to walk through the details and try to help set something up for you guys to travel. The Harrigut repairs are to a point where we're scheduled to commence paving out there on October the 15th. Okay. And we mentioned the Mary Ross project. I did send out the commission meetings hot wash list that Commissioner Stevens mentioned with the updates as they were at the date. If I've overlooked something that anyone's asked for that, you know, hadn't made it, please forward those to me. The HAZ mitigation grants from FEMA are still in a holding pattern waiting for a review and approval. Representative Carter's rep that's been looking to find some opportunities for us to get big major departments or organization programs to help us out with some funding on some of our rehab needs. He's still working to get folks from the bigger groups to set a day aside to come and talk to us, but he's persistent. I'll say this, he's had a lot of communications with them and me, and he's copied me on his communications with them, so I'm relatively confident he's going to make something happen there and allow us a chance to see what we can do.
Funds?
Pardon me?
Is this the CDBG funds?
That's one of them, but there's others. We mentioned that the secure water supplies for our major customers that need to have some source of water through a storm. We've got that set up. We're ready to go on that. We've got a few minor things that will improve on our ability to meet that, but if something were to happen today, we're ready to go for the EOC, the Brunswick High, the hospital, and the jail.
Have we publicized that or given at least those customers that know?
We just did.
I've talked to them. I haven't made a PSA or anything, but the folks that are affected know.
It sounds like some positive press.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, they were happy.
Oh, I'm tickled.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. And we talked about the SPLOST 2005, trying to get control of our money, and that's still in the process through the county attorney. He did? So, well, he sent it to our attorney, and our attorney's reviewing it, I guess, to see what he's changed. And in the strategic business plan, staff is pretty close to finalizing the things that are going in there. We've got to define some last pieces, but again, I mentioned the last meeting that we were looking for the top 3 things each of the commissioners might see as big picture needs that we need to address. Still looking for any feedback on that. If we don't get any, we'll go with the things we believe is the obvious needs that we've identified. And that's my report for the day.
Okay.
Didn't less than 5 minutes.
Okay. We're to the chairman's update. And before I say anything, any of the commissioners have anything they want to say?
Yeah, I'd like to real quick say we, all the work we do on the Georgia water plan at the coastal regional level, we're trying to dig down and get a lot of that information out to specific counties. And we had a meeting here. I want to thank Jimmy and staff for helping accommodate us. And we're going to have, that meeting was to really set up a first meeting of all the stakeholders when it comes to water here in Glynn County and Camden. And one of the things you had talking about golf courses and all. We want folks that own golf courses here in Glynn County to come in and talk to us, and we want to learn how they manage their water. This is just for an example, how they manage their water resources. And apparently folks up in Chatham, they've got some kind of program on managing water in Chatham County on golf courses, and they say it's working very well. And so the point I'm making is there is an effort on the state of Georgia to manage water resources. And quite a few of us understand that program's out there, and there's a plan in place, but really at the county level, most people don't know. Most people just don't know. And so hospitals are going to be invited. They're going to have somebody come, and if they ask me who might ought to represent the hospital, I know one guy's name. But there's gonna be some invites go out, and we're gonna get serious about managing our water resources down here in Glynn County, in addition to whatever joint water and sewer's doing. And they're gonna have a seat at the table, of course, so, but I appreciate y'all getting the thing set up, and of course Jimmy and I guess Ben was on the road, but it was a successful powwow to get this first meeting, probably gonna be in January when we have it, so thank you.
Very welcome.
Yeah. I got a call from Mr. Lyons that lives over in Sea Palms West area. He lives on Wembley Circle. He had previously talked to you about the issue with Bionomics and the work they're doing in the Sea Palms area. His question was, well, don't you guys know when you're gonna finish that project? And I told him honestly, no, we don't. And I explained to him the issues we were running into. He did make one request, and that is if we could start the generators after 9 o'clock or whatever their machinery they're running that's noisy. I guess it's coming on at 8, and see if we can make it 9. I don't know. That's not to say that I want to, do a change order and wind up with more expense, but if it reasonably can be accommodated.
Are they, just curious, are the generators or the gas operated pumps?
There's compressors and gas operated pumps, they're vac trucks that are turning on and sucking stuff out and stuff, so there's a lot of equipment out there.
And the only reason I asked if it was specifically a generator, we've been, we've had a lot of construction going on right up against the building, and Allen and Graham's been using this generator, and I asked them, they said it wasn't any more than a regular generator, but I can't remember the name. It's like Whisper Quiet or something. And it's a big, like 250 kW diesel generator, and it is quiet. I mean, it is just.
They have a big truck that makes a lot of noise.
Yeah.
So if there's no other business before the commission, meeting is adjourned.